is Julie Pearson, Little Thunder. Today is January 20th, and I'm interviewing Robert Redbird for the Oklahoma Native Artists Project, which is sponsored by Oklahoma State University and the Oral Histories Research Program at OSU. We're in a conference room at the Anadarko Public Library. Robert, you've been active on the Oklahoma art scene for many, many years with many, many honors and awards. And I appreciate your taking the time to talk with me. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I partly grew up. As a child, I grew up in Godibo, Oklahoma, which is out in the western part of Oklahoma. I grew up with my grandfather. My grandfather and my grandmother raised me and brought me into this world. I mean, my mother, not I had a mother, but what I'm saying is that my grandfather took over because I was born with epilepsy. I had seizures, and my dad did not like that. And I had a very bad dad. He didn't appreciate me, didn't like me. I was ashamed of me, embarrassed because I have a son. And back in them days, if you had a son like that, back in those days, people were ashamed of it. I was just one of those boys that had a hard life growing up. But it was my grandma, my dad's mother, who took me as a child and began to raise me until I was like 16 years old. They raised me in the home at Godibo. And I tell you what, it was a very amazing thing that I had gone through. As a young boy growing up at Godibo, farm lifestyle, it was, my grandfather was a fantastic farmer. My dad's mother was a white lady. She was white. She was Caucasian. She was white. And my grandfather was Kiowa Indian. But my grandmother, my dad's mother was white and German, I guess German and white, whatever, Caucasian. And she lived right across the street from my grandfather when he was a young man. Back in those days, 165 acres was allotted to those that wanted to homestead back in those times. And my grandfather got 165 acres, the government and the beer and all that, and got a home, a 4-square, 4-room home, porch on each side. And Grandma lived right straight across the road where my great-grandpa lived, Herman Zacharias. They were German and white. And time went by, and my great-grandfather came over to my grandfather, and asked him, "What are you going to do with all that land, Johnny?" And he said, "I don't know what to do with it." He said, "Why don't you let me farm it?" Well, Grandpa didn't know there was a beautiful woman over there. That was my grandma.
Yeah.
So, Grandma, she helped grandfather. She helped grandfather get involved in the farming life, and he became a fantastic farmer. And I grew up on that farm as a little boy. I had seizures all the time. I almost died several times when I was a kid because of my seizures.
They didn't know much about it.
They didn't know much on how to do it, but Grandma always took care of me. And I came through all that. I grew up. I became a teenager. When I was 8 years old, my grandfather was a very famous man. He was Monroe Satoke was his name.
So you had an artistic influence already.
And then I had Vernon Lee Tornicut, my uncle. And then I had Lee Satoke. And then I had another uncle, George Gelntai. All of these guys were very influential artists. My grandpa, Monroe Satoke, was one of the members of the 5 famous Kiowa Indian artists back in those days. And it was interesting to me as a kid. So I was 8 years old. Ma'am?
Did you draw?
Oh, yeah. When I was 8 years old, I told my grandfather, he was very famous, Monroe Satoke. And I told him, I said, Grandpa, I want to be famous just like you. I want to be an artist like you. He said, well, here. And he gave me a pencil and a paper. He said, get started. 8 years old, I started dabbing around and watching him, looking this way, looking that way. And you know what? I began to pick it up. And when I was 16 years old, I sold my first piece of artwork to a doctor.
Wow.
In Carnegie, Oklahoma. And I sold it for $10. And I took that $10 and I gave it to my grandma. I said, go buy some groceries, Grandma. And you know, these things that I did back in those days were fun times. I used to ride behind our wagon. Grandpa had a wagon, a buggy carriage that we went to church every Sunday on. And that's kind of like the lifestyle I had, a farm life. It was a good life. And I never lived with my mom and dad until later when I became old enough to kind of take care of myself and be around my own family. But I was already flourishing as an artist. When I was 16 years old, I began to flourish. I began to be recognized for my artwork.
Were you also using watercolors a bit?
I always just used watercolors.
Okay.
And Grandpa bought me one of them cheap that has a little bitty deal. That's how I got started.
Right.
In watercolor, it was just flat, those little circles. You pick your water, you rub it on there. Well, that's sort of like how I did. But you know, I have to say that God had me in His eyes and in the palm of His hand. Because even though I had a hard time growing up with epilepsy, seemed like it was the road of life was already laid out for me as an artist. Because I went school after school, college after college, to learn how to take care of myself and, if I get married, my wife. So I went to college, I went to school.
Where are some of the places you went to school?
Well, I also went to the Santa Fe Art Institute.
Okay.
In Santa Fe
What
to help
year?
further my education as.
Right.
And I also at one time, briefly, was the art director at Santa Fe. But I couldn't stay behind the desk in Santa Fe. I decided I didn't want that kind of life, so I resigned and I gave them a notice and I left.
Was it in the
That was
40s,
good.
Robert? Was it in the late 40s, do you remember, or 50s?
No, it was back in the late 60s.
Late 60s,
Yeah.
okay.
When I was in Santa Fe. I did a lot of other things. I went to Oak Tech, where I learned how to, for skills that I wanted to exercise in my life, such as welding. I can do beautiful metal sculptures, I just don't do them because of my belief. I am an ordained minister, and I do not create any images. The Bible says, and God's Word says, thou shalt not create any images, or any graven images, or any statues, or any of that sort of thing. So even though I was leaning in that direction, I never went that way. Because, first of all, I am an ordained minister. I am a preacher, and I don't go that way. I tried to do things in the manner in which He wants me to do. So that's sort of like, and I have so much to be thankful for. And as the thing goes on in my life, I find out that it is a wonderful life. And there's a lot of opportunities. My artwork has taken me all around the world. I've had so many miraculous things happen in my life. I've even met Prince Charles at Palm Springs when the late Sonny Bono was the mayor. I designed that year's poster for the U.S. International Open Polo Game Tournament, which was back in 1967. And that poster went all over. I sold it right there, and I did real good. And that night at the reception, where VIPs go and all, I was the celebrity guest artist for that big event. I got to shake the man's hand. You know, these things, I was so happy because I was moving. And I was moving in a circle of life that was so impressive, you know. And God, it seemed like I was just moving up. I won over all the artists in America. Back in 1989 or 90, back in those days, I had won and whipped every artist in the country. I beat them. I got the best in the show, and I just, I just kept winning, and I start becoming in my own, But then, I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but when I left Mountain View or Godibo, I went to school at Fort Sill Indian School.
Okay.
That's where my mom and dad put me. There was a lady there, and Mr. John Tay Moore was her husband's name. Well, it was Mrs. Moore. She had an Indian art club that she formed on the campus at Fort Sill Indian School way back when I was just a teenager. And all the artists that became so famous after that were part of that group.
Who were some of your classmates?
Some of those classmates were Doc Tate Neverquail.
I was thinking of Doc.
Yeah, Doc was one of them. And Oscar Howell was another one. There was so many of them. Raymond Hicks was another one, And then myself, David Williams, Monique. There were artists that became so famous. And I always wondered, about that, when I was growing up and all that, what was I going to do and all that. I don't worry about it no more. But back in those days I did because of my seizures. My seizures has hindered me a lot. I never had nothing to look forward to, even though I painted and all that stuff. It wasn't my mainstream in life. My mainstream in life was to raise a family. I wanted to be like everybody else, but I couldn't because nobody wanted me. I mean, the ladies didn't have anything to do with me, the women, because I was at seizures. And I never had an opportunity like that, and then one day a miracle happened. I met my wife. She took me as I was, and she helped me and nurtured me and encouraged me and stood by me. To this day, we celebrated our 51st anniversary, and we've been together all my life. She took a chance, and she loved me, and she took care of me, and she schooled me and helped me in my life. I'm still with her today, and today I'm still painting. What I'm trying to do right now is get ready for the future. I still have a bright future. Everything is just coming up roses for me. I have a magnificent story to tell, a brand new story, and it is dealing in oils. Nobody has ever seen my oil paintings.
So you're doing oil starting?
I am going to start a new adventure.
Great.
And this adventure is going to take everybody with me down a road of a beautiful life in oils.
Well, I want to pick that up again. First, Robert, I'd like to ask you, when you first started out then and you were painting with the Indian Club there at Fort Sill,
Yeah.
What was your early style like?
Flat.
Okay.
Line work.
Yes.
That's flat work. And I was good at it. Everybody was. Doc Tate remained that way all his life. And he was awesome.
Right.
So then, the flat work, I want to say this, that the flat work, two-dimensional flat work styles back in those days existed, and it was good. But what do you do as time goes by and all these things begin to become stagnant? You have to start thinking, what am I going to do in order to bring this artwork and keep the Native American Indian art alive?
And was your subject matter back then also more historical, Kiowa, specifically Kiowa?
I think my grandpa had a lot to say about that, my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Because my grandfather was quite a historian. And he said, if you're going to do anything, and preserving or painting our people, don't you mess around, you do it right.
Okay.
And so he taught me everything that he knew about our culture, history, stories, legends, and all the things that I paint today. And then I had another man, his name, I give him a lot of credit, his name was William Tennedall, Shirley Williams, Billie Jean
Yes.
Williams' wife. Her grandfather was my wife's grandfather. And it was through his eyes and his life that I even learned more, because he was a holy man, a medicine man. And the stories that I got from him, he says, son, I'm not going to leave you no material stuff. I ain't going to leave you no lands, cars, or houses, or whatever. But he said, what I leave you is knowledge. And what I give you is going to take care of you. And the reason why I'm giving it to you is so that you can take care of my granddaughter, Joquita. That's my wife. His Shirley's sister.
Right.
So I honored that. And I honored that old man until the day he died. I loved him. I took care of him. He used to live with us. I took care of that old man. And Mr. Tennedall, I guess there are so many men in my life that I have to say, hey, hold on now. These guys were the ones who stepped in my life when I needed it. I didn't do this by myself. I had help along the way. And it was these gentlemen that came into my life that helped groom me and bring me forth in this art world business that loved me.
Right.
You know, I used to have a dad. My dad, his name was Bob McCabe. He was my dad, my adopted dad.
Yes, and he was he like the first art dealer that you sort of cultivated a relationship
Yeah,
with?
it was a funny story there. They had in Oklahoma City during that year, I forget what time, it was the early years, I was only 20 years old. But there was a man sitting there at the Azalea Arts Festival in the park down in Oklahoma City. And I walked by there and my wife, and I had paintings in my car. And I wanted to go with the idea that I was going to sell my paintings to somebody there because there was a lot of vendors. My dad and Doris were sitting over there, and I seen all those paintings that he had. Oh, that's my man, I said. So I went over there, and I asked him, I said, do y'all buy Indian artwork? He said, yes, we buy Indian artwork. He said, who are you? I told him my name is Robert Redbird, and I'm an artist. He said, well, Mr. Redbird, let me see what you got. I ran all the way back to my car, which I was several blocks away. And I got my paintings and I ran all the way back to the festival. And I said, whew. I said, here they are. And he started looking at them and looking at them. He said, say, he said, these are just as good as what I got here. And he said, what do you want? Are you selling these? I said, yes, sir. He said, what do you want for all of them? I said, I don't know. I said, whatever you feel like you want to give me for it, if you want to buy them, I said, I'll sell them to you. So he gave me $300. Now, when you're a young 20-year-old kid back in them days, money at $300 was a lot of money.
That's right.
Oh, I said, oh, that was just a power boost in my life. Oh, I got to go home and paint. He said, you go home and you paint me some more, and you bring me some more artwork, and don't stop until I tell you to. So, as the years went by, I never heard him say, don't bring me no more paintings. He said, bring me more. Bring me more. And you know what? My dad, Bob, I loved him just like I loved him just like my own dad. He schooled me, he scolded me, he stood me up and said, hey, wake up. This is what you got to do. And a lot of times my dad would get on to me, and he's the one that shaped my life for the future. God blessed me with this man. When this other man, who was my dad, wouldn't do nothing for me, this man did. And you know what? That's the thing that I can honestly say that really helped me in my life, is to be loved by somebody. Real, I'm not talking about make-believe, I'm talking about real love. That would do what he done for me and my family. He's been there for all 13 of my children. He's been there when they were all born. Every one. And they call him uncle, but it's really his grandpa. But these things that Bob has done in my life took me all over the world.
Did you travel together? I thought that maybe
Everywhere.
you and Bob did.
I and Dad
What
did
are
everything.
some of the places?
Well, we went everywhere. We went all the way to Germany. We went to, Dad was the kind of guy that really meant business. He didn't mess around. And we did almost every show there was in America. Dad had a way of doing things. And he didn't mess around, like I said.
A lot of shows in the West too, right?
What?
A lot of shows in the West.
Oh
Western
yeah,
part of it.
we did one of the most popular ones there. They called it the Pepper Tree.
Yes.
In California. Yeah, desert place. And you know what? That was but the best show that Dad ever did with me was in Denver, Colorado. And he held that big old painting and was dancing all the way to the bank.
It was before Colorado Indian Market, or was
Well, it was the Colorado
It was
Indian
Colorado
Market, yeah.
Indian Market, great.
Yeah.
Did you win an award on that
Oh
one?
yeah, I won the best in the show. I beat everybody in Alaska, Canada, United States, and Mexico that had artwork in that show. I won the best in the show, and I got what's that, Grand Award?
The Grand Award, yeah.
Big old ribbon about that big. And I can remember the guy's eyes. It was called the Glory of a Nation. I wanted to do something that was powerful. So I did a painting that would stand for something of this nation of ours. We have a beautiful nation and a beautiful country. And this is a powerful country because of men who fought for us over there and over there and over there. And my own uncle died in Germany when he died when he was bombed. It blew up. My mother's brother. And so my Uncle Mac gave his life to help us to keep people away from us like Hitler and all them. But it was a rough time for everybody back in those days in the 40s, back in 1944, 45 when Pearl Harbor was bombed. It was a rough time back then too. But I always try to do things, and I always try it with my talent. Not be selfish and keep it to myself. I never was that way. All my life I've been a giver. Here and there, because it's not mine to keep. So I give it whenever the cause is needed for me to step in and say, well, look at this one. Recently, years back, Twin Towers was bombed, exploded in the bomb, and they came down. The families and the people, as a preacher, I looked at that and I said, this is not right. We have to do something. We have to. We are a great nation. Well, our president stepped in and he said, we're going to declare war on these people and this nation and all that. The prophet Samuel says, I'm throwing this in here because it needs to be in here. The prophet Samuel told King Saul, he said, hey, what are you doing with this man, your enemy? You fought the battle and you won. He said, what are you doing with the king down here? And the king was on his knees begging for mercy from King Saul. But the prophet Daniel told him, he said, the Lord says to spare nothing. And what he meant by that, he says, when you declare war on somebody, you go and do it. And he pulled the sword out of the waist of King Saul, and he slew the enemy king. And he said, spare nothing. Today, we are trying to be whatever. We let that nation get away with what they did to our Twin Towers. To me, I don't like that. I'm speaking openly about that. You might cut it out, you may not want to hear it. But that's just from the artist standpoint. I feel like we should have done something to that country that did that to our innocent people here at the Twin Towers. A lot of innocent people died for what? Because of their way of believing. And you know, I just feel like I'm just really a part of that, because I painted 2 pictures and gave them to the city of New York at the request of at that time, Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City. And he came to me. I didn't go to them. And he came to me, to a guy who was my friend, who was the superintendent of these schools down here, Tom Kentrell. Tom came to my house one day and he says, Robert, I got a job for you. A good friend of mine, who is the mayor of New York City, wants to know if you can help. Do a special painting that will glorify the nation and help show that we are a powerful nation and that we're not going to stand for this. And I said, well, what does he want? He said, this is what Mayor Rudy Giuliani wants. Rudy Giuliani wanted. He said, I want a warrior, an Indian warrior with a war bonnet, holding a warrior's lance. And directly behind him, I want this bald eagle. And behind the bald eagle, I want the Twin Towers in the clouds. The Twin Towers in the clouds, the bald eagle in the clouds, and the man himself in the clouds, because this is spiritual. This is our nation coming together, and it's a powerful thing. So I said, wow, what a painting that would make. So I designed it, I painted it. We went to New York City, took it up there when I got it done, and gave it to them. The firefighters commissioner out of New York City saw the painting. Well, I got to have one of them for our firefighters. Would you do me one? I said, sure, I'll be happy to. They didn't know what it would take to put that all together and put it down to where it would be awesome. But I did it for him also. But the only thing that I kind of frowned on was that the firefighters commissioner wanted this picture, his portrait down here at one corner, and then the emblem on that firefighter emblem on this other side. So it was kind of difficult.
Oh, so you had to, did that as part of the gift.
Yeah, as a gift too. Yeah. So I helped the city of New York raise, I think, about $35,000, maybe $40,000 off of that painting.
Because the prints were sold as a fundraiser.
Everything, yeah. And Europe, everything was sold in Europe. Yeah. Nothing was sold here. And I appreciate those people from Europe doing that for our nation.
Right.
Yeah.
When you were working with Bob and you all were traveling, was it your first? It's kind of hard to learn the business side of art, I think. You know, when you start out as an artist, you're more interested in the creative part, and the business side is sometimes tricky. Did you get business tips from other Indian artists periodically, or from Bob then?
No, I got it from my dad, Bob McKay. I got everything from Bob. Bob was a man that went out and took those paintings from other artists, Doc Tates and everybody else's, including mine. And he would go with another guy. His name was Henry Ballant. He was a Swedish guy. Lived in Santa Fe. He has Ballant Studios.
I recognize that name.
Yeah, okay. Well, Henry was my first contact out west. That Dad went to see him and presented my work to him. And he wanted more artwork from me because he was selling them like crazy. Dad, I loved him so much. I made him a part of my life that he would share in everything that I did. I gave him artwork. I didn't sell him artwork. I gave him artwork. All my life I have painted magnificent paintings because I love my dad so much. I said, Dad, take these, sell them. You can use the money. I want to help you. You helped me all these years become a famous artist. Now I want to help you back. And he was the old man, my dad.
Right.
But I loved him so much that I just would do anything for Bob McCabe. You know, that's the way I feel about it.
I remember when, you know, airbrush kind of became the popular medium, you know, for artists, and everybody was experimenting with, and it was great because you could cover these big areas with color. You could get kind of mist-like effects and mystical. Do you want to talk about your work with airbrush a bit?
I want to take credit for that.
All right.
The reason why I want to take credit for it is because it was I. Now you got to look back at those times when Indian artwork was beginning to grow stagnant. That flat two-dimensional style was fading. There came a period of time when everything quieted down. You couldn't hardly sell a two-dimensional flat Indian style work back then. And it was very difficult to go out and sell and make a living because times were moving on.
Right.
That time has passed. So we got to do something else. What do we do? I took our airbrush. Okay? Nobody was using the airbrush. No one. The only one that introduced me to the airbrush was my son, who was a very good artist in his own right, Gary Whitedeer.
Oh, okay.
Gary Whitedeer introduced me. He said, Dad, he said, I got something that I want to show you. Maybe you can use it. Well, I would learn how to regulate air with a brush. Air, you know, because I used to be an auto body repairman. And back in Dallas, Texas, when I grew up in Dallas, I used to repair automobiles and I used to spray paint them. What's the difference between an airbrush?
Right.
You know, it works the same principle. I said, well, I can do that. And at that time, nobody was using the airbrush. All across this land, all across the nation, you didn't see Native American Indian artists using an airbrush. So I said, this is what I'm going to do like Grandpa told me to do. My grandpa said, do the right thing. Don't mistreat it or abuse it. So I took the airbrush and I said, you know what? I was telling my wife one day, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use this airbrush so that I can bring an object out of nowhere. Boom, and there it is. This is the reason why I started using the airbrush, so I can emphasize more on the ceremonial spirituality of the thing. You know, to show that, hey, this thing came from nowhere. Boom, there it is. You know, and see, it's here. So the paintings that I do today, I use the airbrush to emphasize that. I can't deny it, I'm a preacher. So I want to show the spiritualism of everything that I do. When I use these hands, I want to make sure that they are telling the right story. And the only way I can do that is by using the airbrush. The airbrush, I can paint an object coming into view with the airbrush. That's spiritual. Most of our artists throughout this United States are highly spiritual people. They do look at Merlin. Look at what he does. He is one of the most awesomest painters I ever seen, artists that I know. Merlin Little Thunder. And you know what? I'm not just saying it because you're sitting there. I'm saying it because I know in my heart what this man has come to, you know? And that's the reason why I got to say that there are a lot of great artists like Merlin that are out there. I never said I was the best, but I think that I'm probably one of the most famous ones, you know, around. That's all I know. Because, look, I'm a National Hall of Famer, 4-time National Halls of Fame. And you know what? I honor that in my life. You know, I'm the first Native American ever inducted into the Motion Picture Hall of Fame.
I have that as something I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
How did you get into the National?
Well, I used to live in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I had contacts with actors in the entertainment field. And I come across a guy named Kevin Costner. Okay? Yes. He acted in Dances with Wolves. Now, there's a lot of other things there. There's a lot of actors like John Wayne was a very favorite. He was a good friend of mine. John Wayne, Slim Pickens, and Warren Oates All these guys were in the movies. Now, what I try to do as an authority on Indian life and culture was to tell them how to speak.
So you were
all the
cultural consultants.
Yeah, that's what it was. And here's the thing. A lot of our Hollywood Indians were white people. But when it came to real Indian people, I wanted to put emphasis on that language barrier that they had. They couldn't speak real proper English. So there was a place in there that stands out. If you ever watch the movies, Dances with Wolves, look at this guy when he says, "We've come far, you and me." Well, today we would say, look how many years have we been married? We've been married for 50 years. But back in those days, if you've been with somebody, we've come far, you and me. That means we've been together a long time. So there's a lot of other things there that I can talk about that are real. In the life of Indians, the history part of it, I always wondered, and I dreamed about visions that was told to me. And I used to say, boy, I wish I could do that. Now I can. I used to sit there to my grandpa and listen to the stories that he told me about this owl. He tells me about animal stories, about the warrior and the wolf. And these are the things that I record in my paintings. I paint real stuff. I don't just put a wolf in there just to put a wolf in there. I tell it like it is. And I'm a historian artist. I got the historian artist of the award at the Hollywood and the Stars Awards in Beverly Hills, Hollywood, when I was inducted into the Motion Picture Hall of Fame that night. And I got the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Humanitarian Award, Artist of the Year Award, Historian Artist of the Year Award. Because why? I got those awards from the state of California because I didn't do it to get recognition. I did it to help those handicapped kids. And for 8 years, I supported their summer program. You know, the same way I did in Scottsdale. For 8 years, I supported these kids that Bob Tunglin had. All right. Now, I did a lot of fundraising money so these kids can have a summer camp. They were handicapped kids, crippled and all this. But I asked him, what are you doing for these kids besides monthly dances or once a month? He said, nothing. I can't do anything. I said, why don't you take them on field trips? He said, we don't have the money. That's when I start thinking, okay, you ain't got no money, let me help you. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm an artist. I'm a very famous artist. You buy my paintings. I said, these same paintings that you're buying, I'll produce 15 to 20 of them, and we'll have a show at the Borgata in Scottsdale. All the money that I get from there, I said, I'll give it to you for these kids so they'll have a summer program. They can go on tours, trips, whatever. And he said, you'll do that? I said, sure, I'll do it. And that's how we got started. I think the first year we did $45,000. That was a great start for that first year. Right. The most I ever made for those kids was $56,000. And you know what? People were so generous. I had celebrities. I had Waylon Jennings. I've had Tanya Tucker. I've had people who in the entertainment business come down and help me. I had Governor Fife Simonton. I've had Governor Rose Mulford from the both Arizona governors. I've had people of the staff for the corporation to come and help me. That's how we did it back in those days. Now I'm kind of getting up in the age. Now I'm kind of slowing down, but yet everything's coming up roses for me. I don't know. Like I said, I had a heart attack, you know, and zip here. But you know what? God is so good that He spared me and brought me back. And now everything, people are so happy. The people who thought I was done for are so delighted that I'm back. And they seeing the good things coming here, and they're all behind me. Everybody loves it. So, you know, I just want to pass that on to you. You know, that to the people out there, you know, that, hey, have hope. And have hope in what you put forth in your beliefs. Believe that it will be done and it shall be done. According to the Lord. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, when you were in your 20s, then there was this whole kind of Kiowa cultural revival going on too, and the Palmer brothers were putting together the Veterans Society that you know, eventually became Black Legging Ceremonials. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about the influence of maybe Native American church on your artwork. And,
Sure. Let me enlighten you about these things because they're real. You know, it's all spiritual. A lot of people don't look at it that way, but I do. And the thing that I want to tell you is that the peyote ceremonials that are being held to this very day are highly spiritual and do work. What God gave our people back in that time, and I'm going to tell you a story of how that came about for the Kiowas. Back in the early 17, maybe hundreds, the Kiowas was living, the Kiowa tribe wasn't in Oklahoma. They were from Montana. Back in those days, the Kiowa, they had runners. And these runners would go here and there, and they'd report back to the chief. These runners went all great distances. One runner came south, and he found this land that we call Oklahoma, from Colorado. And he told the chief, he says, I have found this beautiful place. It's not cold or people won't die in the wintertime. There's plenty of food, plenty of game, plenty of everything. And he said, this is where we should go. So they had a meeting, the chief and the sub-chief, and they had a meeting. The sub-chief said, no, this is our land. This is our country. We're going to stay here. But the chief said, yes, but our people are dying because they're freezing to death. They're dying. We need to go somewhere else. So the chief brought the Kiowas that wanted to come with him, and they separated. The tribe split. So the Kiowas came south. There was this one woman with an old man, her dad, who was in that movement. As they came southward, that old man started getting sick. They got somewhere by Colorado Springs, Denver, in that area, as they were journeying south. He said, I don't think I can go on any longer, daughter. She said, but I will take you as far as I can, Dad. She brought this man with him all the way down somewhere. They wound up down here by Midland, Texas, and south. Okay? Now, as the story goes, our legend tells us that this lady was dying. She was left alone by the people. She dropped back to take care of her dad. As she was laying there dying, she heard a voice. And she looked up with dim eyes, and she saw a white buffalo who was spiritual. And it began to speak to her. And it told her, why are you dying when there was so much abundant of life around you? Why are you laying there dying? Well, she didn't know there's nothing to eat here. He said, get up, follow me. I'll show you. And he took her, and there was a herb down there. Get that. And told her what to do. And he cleaned it off, and he said, now eat it. You eat that, and eat as much as you can until you can't eat no more. You will have new strength and new life. That herb that he gave her is being misused to this day by people who don't know what they're doing, and they're disrespecting our ways by doing it. It's called peyote, the peyote button. They think that they can get high on it, but it's not made for that use. It's made as a medicine for our Indian people. And when Grandpa was telling me about the story about the many ways that you can prepare that herb to feed in the condition of the sick person, you know, all these things I learned. I observed, I learned, I watched him do it. And so this lady got up and she ate that herb, ate it. And along with that, while she was doing all that, this spiritual white buffalo, the God that we serve today, was through the white buffalo, was giving her songs. peyote songs, ceremonial songs. And he said, take this medicine and give it to your people. And to this day, it's still here. So that's kind of like what I wanted to tell you about that. Okay. So from that time forth, it was a woman who held these meetings. That lady. But when she died and got too old, she turned it over to her brother. And then the men began to use that. And the men began to run the meetings. There was no women. But even though a man was sitting in there, all these men sitting in there, no women's in there, when they beat that drum and they're singing, boom, 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 you can hear a woman singing with the man. There's no woman in there. But you can still hear that woman singing when they beat that drum. And they're singing these sacred ceremonial songs. They're for healing. And everything is going so good. You know, and you see things. Good things. Not bad things. Good things. Sometimes Grandpa told me that he could see the things of the dark forces that inhabited the sick person leave that thing. They leave. He said, sometime I can actually see that. I didn't believe him, but I do now, because let me tell you why I believe in that. God gave these people something, and we using it. Now, Grandpa Cornbread had a medicine bag, and he called me into his bedroom one day. Come here, son, I want to show you something. So I went into his bedroom. This is how I know that these things do exist, and the power of our God Almighty, the Creator, is with us. It's simply because when he opened that medicine bag, he said, tell me what you see, look in there. I couldn't believe my eyes. Because when I opened it up, that little bag was about that round, and at the bottom. But when I looked in that bag, there stood a little white spirit buffalo at the bottom of that bag. He said, that is my medicine. That is my power. That's what gave me. So, you know, I've seen things in my life that we artists try our best to bring forth to the people. It's not just making money. That's not what it's all about. That don't have no meaning to me, money. What means to me is what I can give. It's going to help somebody. I told this lady, let me tell you what happened. I'm not trying to get away from the subject here, but I'm going to tell you what happened. This young man called me from Los Angeles, California. He was on drugs, dope, and alcoholic and everything. His life was ruined. But he had sense, good sense. He said, I went to one of your shows down there in Anaheim. They were showing some Indian artwork down there. And I seen this painting, and it spoke to me. He said, I looked at it, and I couldn't take my eyes off from it. It was talking to me. And he said, don't you know what? I bought that painting. It's hanging in my living room to this day. And he said, let me tell you something. I used to be that kind of a person, but when I bought your painting and it's hanging in my house, I'm not that kind of person no more. See, Jesus Christ delivered me. He came in my life and cleaned me. That's what I like to hear. That's what I know when I'm doing the right thing here is when people say, hey, look what I bought. I bought a Redbird spiritual painting. You know, and I don't know. I don't just like to paint any paintings. I like to do something for the people when I paint. There's a message in those paintings. It's meant just for them. And I like to try to declare that in every piece of artwork I do today. As a preacher, an ordained minister, I stand by that. I don't like to just paint for the money. I like to paint to glorify my Father, which is in heaven, and say, hey, this belongs to the people, you know? And that's the way I really am. I live that way every day. I'm not trying to build myself up. I'm telling you how I am. That's the way it is.
You know, I remember when the Southwestern style became popular in the like mid-'80s.
Yeah.
And R.C. Gorman was
Yeah.
at his peak.
Yeah.
But you also had a Southwest phase. Was Gorman any kind of influence, do you think?
No.
Or were you? Okay.
No, nothing.
How did it
Because
come
you
about?
know what? I'm going to tell you a story. A lot of people always get this wrong and they say, well, you're doing like stuff like Gorman. No. One time, I lived in Albuquerque years ago. When I first moved to Albuquerque, I was a young man.
In your 20s or 30s?
No, I was about like in my early 30s.
Early 30s.
All right. But here's what a lot of people don't understand. And I get so mad when they make this statement. Oh, you're copying R.C. Gorman. Well, I got news for them. No, I don't copy nobody. What I had, when he came into my art gallery and sat down and put his alcohol down there, and he started watching me paint. He was a young man. Nobody knew who R.C. Gorman was back then.
What gallery was it, Robert?
It was just my art studio in Santa Fe.
Okay.
I had a private residence art studio.
Right.
And he found out where I was at, and he used to come and visit me and watch me paint. I'm not going to say that he took from me, but I'm pretty sure he did something there because I did the early blanket figures way before he ever did them. And a lot of people say, oh, you're copying R.C. Gorman. No, I did not copy R.C. Gorman. I don't know where he got his style, but I'm pretty sure where he got it. He got it from me. But I never said nothing to him. I don't claim that. I don't know.
And artists often influence each other, but that's...
But he used to sit there and watch me paint all the time before he was anybody. One time, after years passed, bam, R.C. Gorman here, R.C. Gorman there. Who is R.C. Gorman? Bam, 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 R.C. Gorman everywhere. He became so famous, more famous than I am. I mean, he was all over the place. But I got to hand it to him. He did it. By God, he done it. And I was so proud of him. He was one of my friends, but, you know, some things I didn't like, but that's his life. He can do what he wants to do. But I did like ORC. We did many shows together. We had the same agent out of London, England, and Mr. Collier used to take our paintings and take us around the world. And you know what? These are the things that I remember. R.C. Gorman was a showman. I'm not kidding you. Boy, that guy can charm the pants off a woman. I mean, just bam, he can charm the heck out of you. And the women would just go for it. R.C. Gorman was a lady killer, boy. I used to say, why did you do that? Don't do that. They're not interested in you. They're interested in your paintings. But God knows that I love R.C. Gorman. He was all right. I miss him. I miss doing shows with him and traveling all over this country and around the world with him. R.C. Gorman was a real good man. He was really in his own way. You got to understand him. I understand him. I learned how to understand that man, to understand where he's coming from and what he's trying to do. Just like every artist in the country. Just like your husband, Merlin. Merlin's got something to say, and he's doing a very excellent job of it. He is one of the most dynamic artists alive today, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not just saying it because you're his wife. I'm saying it because this man has the talent, and he is awesome. So that's the thing. There's a lot of people like that in this United States of America. So I'm just tooting my horn about everybody, you know, because that's the way I feel.
Robert, you used to, you were painting at the time of Jerome Tiger and Woody Crumbo and a lot of those really famous artists who've gone on that we look up to today. Do you have any stories you'd like to share about?
I have all kinds of stories. And they're all good too. Well, I'll tell you a story about Woody Crumbo. He was a very dear friend of mine. He was my elder, but my senior, but I looked up to that man and I respected him. Woody Crumbo told me one time, he said, Robert, one of these days you're going to be a very famous artist. I was a young man back then, but he said, I can see great things coming about. And he said, I want to tell you one thing, a word of advice. I said, what is that? He said, when you become famous, when you will, remember what I tell you. Do not do any lithographs. reproductions. I said, why? He said, because that's where I made my mistake. A lot of people, when you become so famous and you start reproducing your work, he says you're going to have a very difficult time selling that original. Anywhere you go, I don't care, he said. I can't hardly sell my originals anymore. And he was well up in the years, an elderly gentleman. And he said, that's the advice I'm going to give you. One day when you come into your own and you're a very famous man, don't let nobody out here try to sucker you into making those lithographs. Don't. And that's why I never did lithographs.
But you did do prints.
But I did,
no,
well, lithograph prints or whatever.
Right.
Yes, I did finally eventually give in.
Right.
And he was right.
Oh, so you think that maybe
I believe that when you reproduce your work,
I see.
It knocks the sales off from your retail originals. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will buy a print for $50 or $75 before they'll buy a painting for $1,100. Right. So that's what I found out, and he was right. I did just like he told me not to do, and I found out that's right. When you become well known to the point where your life really depends on your artwork, and you move to an area that is not art conscious or, you know, and then they expect you to give them artwork for nothing. This is what I want to encourage all young artists. Don't sell your soul. I did the wrong thing. I didn't listen when I should have. And now that I'm a famous artist, I know I am. I mean, I'm a Hall of Famer 4 times. That don't tell me I'm famous. But the thing is that I don't let that bother me anymore. I used to really think that being famous was something. But it really isn't. It doesn't have no effect or nothing on my life. It's just that I know where I've been. I've been there, and now I'm back.
Right. You had a story about Jerome Tiger.
Jerome Tiger was a very dear friend of mine. We went to college together. We wound up at Okmulgee Tech, Okmulgee, Oklahoma. Jerome, oh, I loved his work. We were real good friends. I'm not going to say the best of friends, but we were buddies. We were friends. And he used to come to my apartment there when I was going to college there. And he used to sit there and watch me paint, and I used to go to his house, and I used to sit there and watch him paint. First thing, next thing I know, boy, I did them slenderly figures with the wind and just flaps flowing like Jerome Tiger. He said, well, I said, that's my painting. I said, no, it ain't. This is mine. I painted it. And we just laughed, and he would paint like me.
So you did try to imitate each
other? Yeah, we did imitate both each other. We painted up each other. One day, he went home. That's the last time I seen him. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people do crazy things. He had no business doing it because he wasn't that kind of man. Mm-hmm. Russian roulette with a gun. Boom. Mm-hmm. Ended my friend's life. Mm-hmm. But at least I can say I knew him as a person. And I knew what he was all about because I knew Jerome. I knew him. And you know, he was a friend. We used to chum around and go everywhere together in Okmulgee. And that's how I know Jerome Tiger. I know him. I know his works. He was one of the most famous Native American artists of his time. And that was something.
Thank you for sharing that.
Solomon McCombs. Archie Blackout. Black Bear Bosun. Woody Crumble. All of these guys, all gone now. And now I'm the old guy. I was in a show at Ritter's one year, and I walked in the doors, and that guy knew me. Ladies and gentlemen, the boss is in the house. I don't know what it meant. Robert Redbird. I guess he meant that I'm a senior now, and that I'm just an old man now. I don't know. And I said, oh, my. No artwork, though, just me. I was looking at the show, looking at everybody. In fact, Merlin was there.
Oh, that's...
But anyway, it was kind of a funny thing there, you know. I really enjoy everything.
Well, so acrylic gouache is sort of your preferred medium. And it seems like, looking back on your work, it's kind of divided between work on paper and work on canvas.
In the beginning, it was just regular tempera watercolor.
Okay.
In
When
the
you were
very
doing
beginning.
some of the
And then later on, when I decided to get away from the flat two-dimensional ceremonial peyote paintings and all that stuff, that were priceless right now. You can't get one from me.
Right.
And if you do, you got something.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about those just a second because they're so striking looking. I just saw a print of one, and you know, I can't remember what it was called. I think there was an image of the buffalo in the clouds or something too, but it was snowy. You know, there was foreground and background, a lot of landscape, and you just sort of made a choice to move away from that because we needed to do something. Okay.
The economy, you got to remember now, Indian artists had to live by their wit. I mean, if you were good, you might make it. But if you were not good and you tried to make it, it would be very difficult. I know because I thought I was good enough to make it. Let me tell you this part. This is the way I feel about it. When you decide to do something, do it. Whether it be good or bad, do it anyway. Because once it's done, it's been completed. A lot of people don't understand where I come from, but I understand where I'm coming from because I've been there before. There's a time when I used to be a farmer. I did a lot of farm work for farmers out there on land, farms. I used to drive a tractor. I used to drive a combine. I used to plant seed. I used to do everything, work the cattle. I was a farmer. $10 a day. Back in those times, when I was young, $10 a day was a lot of money. Believe it or not, it was. 25 cents you could buy a gallon of gas with it. You can't do it now. But that's where I come from. Those days when I had to work and I got cheap pay. Now I look at it and say, I would not dare go out and work for $10 a day. But when your babies are little, all my children are all grown up now. They all got families and they're all grown up. They're gone, they left the home. I had 13 children, 45 grandchildren, 10 great-grandchildren. And I'm still with the same woman. And you know what? God has really blessed me in that kind of life. Today I'm still blessed. Today I'm still painting for the people out there. And I'm doing the best I can to bring them something wonderful. And you know, that's my goal in life, is to go out of this life painting. But I've got a surprise for the people out there. The rest of my life, this year, I made a resolution that this year I'm going to go ahead and feed the people out there my oils.
Yeah.
It's time before it's too late. Before it is too late, I want the world to see what I can do in oils. They are awesome. And I can paint your face and look like you're, I mean, it's so real, so beautiful. That's what I can't hardly wait to do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So what else?
So what is your creative process like?
Okay.
When you get an idea, how does it happen?
Let me show you. Let me show you. There is none. I mean, seemed like there you would say, well, how do you do that? How did you get that idea? I don't have to get no ideas. I'm schooled as an old man in the ways of our people. That I know enough that I can sit down and do anything I want to do. Because I'm lived to a ripe old age where I can see things that the youngsters don't see. And know things that the youngsters don't know that's trying to be artists out there. Artists going to and fro just painting anything. I don't paint that. Your husband is one of those good artists. He's one of those kind that does not mess around with make-believe art. He's not a faddist. That man knows what he's doing. That's the way I am. I know what I'm doing. And I don't have to just make believe art. I paint the real McCoy. That's the way a lot of people, they gotta, these young guys out there, you know, are painting, but they're throwing stuff in there that has no business being in there, you know? In a painting, I mean. I don't see, and they're getting away with it because the people are so, they don't know what they're doing when it comes to buying art, so they just buy whatever they get. Oh, I like that. That'll look good in my living room. Or that'll look good on my bed or in my dining room. So they go in and buy something that really don't have any meaning. It's just an ending with all kinds of wishy-washy stuff in there. I don't like to paint like that. I like to paint real good, wholesome, quality, historical stuff. I did a painting recently about the Kiowa warrior and the red wolf. Now that's a story that is true to our people. To be able to paint stuff like that and bring it about in a work of art that is so beautiful. You've got the spiritual warrior who is supposed to help this Kiowa warrior who is wounded by submerging him into water. Later on, when that warrior becomes well and healed up and everything, what happens? The wolf is by his side, and they become great, cunning warriors and hunters. And people went down to history, in the Kiowa history, as such. See, these things that I paint are real things. I don't make believe art. No, I don't. I don't care for it. I don't approve of it. But then a lot of people are doing it. You know, they just put a mark here, boom, a circle, or something, and then they sign it. That's not art to me. That's scribbling. I want to see some real stuff. You know, some of these cowboy artists out there in this world, Joe Beeler, for one, is probably one of the greatest artists I know, or I did know when he was alive. I used to sit there and I used to admire these guys. Not just Indian artists, but white guys that boy were really good. And I said, oh my God, I don't know how you do that. I wish I could paint like that. But I used to watch Joe Beeler, and I used to know these guys when I was young. And they're a great inspiration to me in my life. They're the ones that showed me if you want to do something, you do it right. Because when they paint, everything, every little rock and detail and weed and tree and leaf, boy, I mean, they're good. You ever seen cowboy artists?
Oh, yeah.
Boy, I mean, they are really good. And Joe Beeler was one of the finest artwork. Peter Hurd was another one. All the great artists of that time, when I was a young man coming into my own, that I knew these guys. And you know, I can honestly say that. That's where I'm at today. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm the man that I am today. It's because of people like them.
Do you do a lot of sketching, Robert, to prepare for like the warrior with the red wolf? Did
No.
you? Okay, so you're painting directly.
I do not sketch. Everything that I do, I paint. I don't sketch my subject matter. Like I want to paint a horse and rider, it's here. I don't have to sketch. It's too much time. My time is valuable as an artist. I make a living by painting. So I have to do without this. Oh, let me see if I want to do it. No, I don't have time to do that because I'm a famous artist. Because people want something, they want it now. I ain't got time to sit there for hours trying to sketch out a painting. I just take my brush and paints and start painting. That's what experience can do for you. If you don't have to sketch, your idea is here. Your picture is here. All you got to do is just say, okay, I'm going to do it. And do it. See, that's the thing I don't do. I don't like to sketch. To answer your question, no. I don't sketch.
And, you know, to pick up on your airbrush again, you know, it's kind of interesting because I noticed that a lot of your iconic pieces that I think about, they have that kind of black outline, but when it's airbrush, it becomes dimensional.
Faded. Yeah.
It makes a shadow. It makes
You don't
everything-
have that line marking down.
Right.
No,
it makes
no, I don't do
everything
that.
have a dimension.
The reason why I do that is because everything that I try to do is spiritual. I'm not doing it to box it in. I feel like a painting shouldn't be boxed in. I feel like a painting or the subject matter should be loose and free because that's the way it is supposed to be. I don't feel like you should make a circle and then just put a line around that circle so it just, I don't like that. Because in here, I'm a spiritual man. And everything that I deal with in my life is spiritual. I don't go for that starkness, that directness and stuff in art. I don't like that because I don't want to see a line drawn around your body. I want to see haze and the glow.
That energy,
You know
that
what I mean?
spirit
Yeah,
coming
you know,
out.
that's what
yeah.
I want to see. I want to see the aura around you. And when you use an airbrush and I do it that way, then it separates anyway. It's going to separate anyway. It becomes dimensional. And this is the part that a lot of people don't understand the artist and why he's painting this way and that way. Well, maybe this will help shed a light on that because I have to go because of who I am and how I want to tell the story in the art piece, what life is all about for not only me, but for what I'm trying to portray. These are real things, you know. They're not just make-believe. And all the things that I witnessed in my elderly age, well, I could go into that, but I don't think right now is the time to talk about stuff like that because we're talking about this.
Well, let's talk about your signature. Which
My signature?
Yes, you sign your paintings with the black and white eagle feather.
Okay, the reason why
How did that happen?
well, let me tell you what happened. Before that, I used to not use that. But an incident happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was a guy named Robert Redbird who was painting pictures over there. There's another Robert Redbird.
What tribe? was
Cherokee.
he? Cherokee.
I was very shocked. I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Billie Jean Williams came to my house and he said, there's a guy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, he's a Cherokee Indian, and he's claiming and pretending to be you. I said, you gotta be kidding? He said, no, he says, and this man is painting pictures that don't even come close to you. I said, that's one of the reasons why I guess this guy in Santa Fe that carries my artwork in his art gallery at the La Placita, and I almost got in a fight.
Wow.
I said, we almost got in a scrap because I told him, he said, Robert, what is going on here? Look at your artwork. It's lousy. I said, sir, that's not my painting. I don't paint like that. I said, you ought to know better than that. He said, no, that's your painting. It's got your name. I said, no. I said, that may have my name on it, but I did not paint that. And we almost got in and went Fifth City. But he later on admitted that the Robert Redbird that sold that painting to his manager was not me. And then he later on apologized to me. So I know that there's another Robert Redbird somewhere around the Tulsa, Oklahoma area that is painting or trying to paint like me. So I just want people to know that, look out for this guy. That's all.
But, so that's
But
when
my
you started.
signature, the feather,
Yes.
where it came from was because of that man in Tulsa. I decided to separate me. I used to just say sign Robert Redbird. But I said, well, I'm going to register this, and I'm going to add a feather and copyright it. And that's exactly what I did. And to this day, I've never heard nothing.
Okay.
So that's how that came
That
about.
solved that
Yeah, I
problem.
put an eagle feather in there. Yeah.
You know, humor doesn't seem to play a really big role in your work. Even with some of your decorative images, everything is serious. The subject matter is serious. The figures are usually pretty serious. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah. The reason why I don't make fun with my artwork is because it's not fun. It's a serious business. If you want to be a cartoonist, then you can be a cartoonist and then it's fun. But when you have a story to tell and it reflects on your ancestral backgrounds, your culture, your life as a Native American, and your beliefs in your culture and the ceremonials that we do have, you ain't got no time to be a comedian. You want to do the right thing. That's the reason why I am a serious artist. I don't play around with my art. It's really special to me. And that's how I look at it. That's the way I feel. And you will never see me do a cartoon character. I ain't got time to waste my time with that. See, it's the same way. When you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you ain't got time to mess around with this wishy-washy, I'm going to church Sunday, but next Sunday I'm not going. You want to be lukewarm? No. You be right there for Christ Jesus, just like you are in anything that you do. Just like you are about what you're doing here. You are about what you're doing and you do it good. That's the thing that I try to emphasize on. Be a man of precision thinking. Do it right. Don't mess around with this wishy-washy stuff. I don't have time for it. I don't have time for it in my life. My life, I'm getting to be an old man. And my life is too short to play around with my talent. I won't play with it. That's the reason why you notice that. In my work, everything I do is a serious business. I'm not taking fun out of joy out of painting. It's more fun to me to paint something that's real than it is to make believe. So I rather do that than to make believe and fool the people out there. To fool them. They're not stupid people out there in this world. So I try to keep my paintings as accurately as I can and to the point.
You know, your props in many of your iconic images, like pots, or it might be a peyote fan, or whatever, they're very important. And I'm wondering, before you started painting, do you already know what prop is going to go with that particular figure? Do they come to you together as an image, or?
I don't have to think about it. I know, and all I know is what belongs in that painting. I put into it. That one particular piece of artwork. Should I put a pot in there? No, you don't need to put a pot in this one. Should I put an eagle feather fan or a macaw parrot feather fan? You know, I already know up here what that painting looks like. It just hasn't surfaced yet. And the reason why I know that is because the good Lord has given me that vision of what I need to do when a person tells me, I'd like to have this kind of painting. Well, you got to put your thinking cap on right now and say, okay, she wants this kind of painting or he wants this kind of painting. And then you start putting it together and make sure it's right. When you put it together up here and they look at it, wow, that's exactly what I wanted. You're on the right track. This is what I like to hear. This is what I like to see, is the happiness in their faces. Say, oh, I just love it. You know, these are the things that I like to do. I don't like to mess around and just paint any old thing and say, here, take it or leave it. No.
I've noticed that contrasting, you know, designs, like in a calico shirt, for example, and then the blanket. So it's not just colors, but it's like will be patterns or designs you work for that combining some of those.
Well, this is make-believe. I don't know if they make in shirts those colors or those using those patterns and all that. But art is art. Like I always tell people, I am the artist. I have the right to exaggerate from time to time.
Right.
It may be a different kind of shirt that's not supposed to be in there, but it's still my shirt. And I designed it and created it. I went to an art show down in Phoenix, Arizona one time. And the guy loved my shirt so much that he told me. I caught him. And what he was doing, he took my design and he began to make shirts that I designed off of my artwork, okay? Well, I looked over there and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I told my wife, I said, look, you recognize anything over there? She went like that. Oh my God, those are your shirts. I said, yes, they are. That man's copying my work and he's copying my shirts. I have flower designs, squares, blocks, everything. And nobody painted like that. Nobody. Nobody makes shirts like that. Those were my designs. The guy went as far as copying my designs that I put in my paintings and had those designs put on his fabric. And then he made shirts out of it. I could not believe it. And I told him, I said, sir, you're infringing on my rights. I am? I said, yes, you are. Let me show you something. So I went back to my booth and I come back with a painting. I said, you see that painting you got, that shirt right there? I said, yeah. Now look at this. Oh, his eyes got big. Oh my. I said, you are copying my design, and you know what? I can sue the heck out of you for doing that. That's my right. That's my design, not yours. And you're making shirts that come off of my images, and you're making money off of it. Where's my percentage? Where's my money? I said, I don't do that to you. I don't go around making shirts and copying you, do I? He said, no. I said, well, this is my business. I have a right to make a living, and this is how I make my living. Those are my designs you're using on it. Look at that one over there. Look at that one. Look at how you made them. They're made exactly like my shirts. He said, well, what can I say?
Do you think he stopped? You didn't see him again?
He stopped. He stopped. My attorney made sure that he stopped.
Good.
I took one of his business cards and hooked him up with my attorney.
Yeah.
Scared him off. I never seen no more shirts after that anywhere. I didn't mean to kill his business. I just didn't like it because he was copying my design.
Right.
You know, and that's not right. I don't do that to everybody. As an artist, I got my own style. I don't need to copy anybody.
Looking back on your career, what do you think one of the moments was when you were kind of at a fork in the road and you decided to go a particular way?
I decided to do that being an artist when I was young. I was about in my late 20s, maybe 30s then, early 30s. I was on that tractor out there, driving that tractor, plowing that field. And I was an artist. And I told my wife, she said, what are you doing home so early? I said, I just made a decision in my life to do something with my talent. Why do I want to play around with my talent when I'm farming out there and I'm wasting my time farming when my heart's not really in it? So I said, I set that tractor aside, Mom. Now I'm going to paint full time and you watch. Things are going to start happening. And I shoved that tractor and farming aside, never did drive a tractor ever since. I've been painting ever since. And I said, this time it's going to be done different. What do you mean? I said, well, all the other times I was just practicing fooling around. But no more fooling around. No more pretending. No more just goofing off. I said, this is going to be my mainstream in life. This is how I'm going to take care of you and my kids. And I'm putting all this other stuff, all wishy-washy stuff aside, and I'm going for it. I'm going to become one of the best artists in America. And I said, that's my dream one day. Today, it's realized that I am what I said I was going to become. Why? Because I didn't mess around no more. My days of messing around were over. So I pinpointed that spot in my life and I said, that's where I want to be. And that's where I am today.
What, if you had to choose one high point of your career or, honor or experience, what would that be?
Well, there's a lot of them. It's hard to choose. Yeah. I mean, here I am, sitting here as an old man, answering your questions, and looking back on all the accounts of my life, which was so miraculous. I have no detail of one place or one thought, because it was a glorious trip. Everything that I did, I was the limelight. I was up there in the light. I was a star. I did everything. I was the man. I used to wear gold jewelry and all that fancy stuff. I was the man. I even glowed when I walked. This lady took a picture of me. She said, "Oh my God, look at this." I said, "What is it?" I was in Palm Springs, California, and it's hot down there. And I had all white. I wore white shoes, which I still wear white shoes. And wear white pants, white shirt, and turquoise jewelry with gold. And I had gold everywhere. And I walked out in that sun. And that lady said, "Oh my God, I got to catch this." And she was just a lady taking pictures around Palm Springs. And she took a picture of me. And I swear, I glowed in that sunlight. There was an aura, a white aura around me that just, and I was, to me, I thought I looked pretty good. I thought I looked handsome. But anyway, yeah, that was one of the most amazing, outstanding things that ever happened to me in my life, is to see that.
Yes.
I've never seen that ever since. So, you know, it must be failing or something. Fading away or something, my old age.
What about one of the low points in your career?
My lowest point in my life is when I had open heart surgery. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I thought I was going to die, and I did for a moment. Dr. Randall, I praise the Lord for his life, brought me back that I can paint some more. But that was the lowest part in my life, when I know I died, and I came back from that. But the good part about it is what happened after I died. Life goes on. You don't just die and this body dies, but you live on. And that's the part that I want to tell everybody. Life goes on, and it's beautiful. But the lowest point in my life is when I died, and they had to call my wife and tell her. To see her expression, excuse me, to see my wife's expression when the doctors told her that I failed, still brings tears to my eyes, because I think about my wife all the time. I love her. She's my bosom buddy, my friend, everything. That's when I saw her. And a lot of people may think I'm crazy, but I'm not. I saw my wife's reaction when he told her I died. And she wept, and I felt so bad being over there where I was at, looking at my wife. I wanted to hold her, but I couldn't. That's the reason why I paint the way I paint. This is the reason why God made me the way I am, as an artist, as a human, a person. It's because I got a lot to say, and a little bit of time left to do it. That's the reason why I told Joe Creeder, my wife, I said, "Joe, I ain't got much time left in my life, not too many years left now, I'm up in the age. But what I got left now, I would like to surprise the world, because my work is all over the world. I said, I would like to surprise them by doing these beautiful oils and go out of this life painting oil paintings. The people will see something they've never seen before in Robert Redbird art, but they have to see it, and then they'll know that I'm on my last road, my last mile in this life. I have to complete it. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to start very soon to do that. I'm just waiting for the right moment. The moment is not now. I'll know when the time is for me to do that. But yes, that was the hardest thing for me to face.
Will your subject matter be?
My subject matter will be the same thing. The only thing it'll be more realistic. It will be more alive than ever. That's the part I can promise you, is that the watercolors, they're fixed in their place and they're stagnant. And they're beautiful. But with oils, you have a spirit that's going to dwell in those paintings that's going to come alive at you. Watercolors are start, finish, bam, it's done. Not with oils. Oils, you have the freedom to capture that spirit of that person. How he lives, how he looks, and what's in his eyes. To see that expression in their faces, real expression of real people, not watercolor people, that's a whole different story. But to go to the heart of that person and say, hey, let me do you a picture of you. Let me paint you. You're going to capture that soul of that person. You're going to see that person. That's the reason why. You have to excuse me. I got tears in my eyes. But you know what? I think about stuff. I think about that road that I was on in my spirit. And that road was going like, well, if you're looking at me, the road was from here and it was going this way. And it was going up there. And at the end of that road was the biggest, brightest light you can see. And in that light was the Creator. Jesus also was there. And I was walking on that road and that angel came to me when I had my open heart surgery. When I thought I died, they said I was gone for a while. I saw that. This I'm sharing with you because it's real stuff. That the angel took me by the hand and said, you see that line going over there? I said, yes, ma'am. Go get in that line. I didn't know why I was going to get in that line. But I was already over there on the other side. And I got over that line, and there's a tall, big gentleman, a white guy. He was standing there, just had the most beautiful face and smile on his face. And he looked at me, and he went like this. And I said, are you Jesus? He said, no, I'm just a saint, just like you are. And he put his arms around me and gave me the biggest hug. And he said, I said, what is this? He said, you see them people? You see this one? He said, we're all going to meet Jesus up there. That's where we're going. You know, that's what I saw when I had my open heart surgery. That's the reason why I can't live any other way. That's why I have to live the way I live now. Because I got something to live for. Before, I didn't have anything to live for. But now I have something to live for. And it's not only just the vision that I had. It's because I read my Word of God every day. I feed on it. And a lot of people say, what do you come into the restaurant, but you never eat. You always just drink coffee in the mornings. I said, yes, I do. I'm just not eating that food that you're eating. But I'm eating this food that God is giving me. And it's the meat of the Word of God. I'm having breakfast. I'm feeding on the Word of God. While you eat that natural food, I'm eating that spiritual food. And you know what? That's the way it is. That's the way I am. I can't help it. A lot of times, I used to remember back a long time ago, when I first got into this artwork, that it was just fun. That it was just a trip that I was going to go on, that, you know, and have fun and get famous and wear fancy clothes and belts and everything. Money in the bank and all that. It wasn't that way at all. What it was is a serious business that you have to go through it. They can't just push it aside and say, well, I won't do it. A lot of guys do that for the money. They do it to whet their appetite as an alcoholic. A lot of our Indian people who become Native American artists find it very easy to dip into the alcohol bucket, to spend their money on drugs, dope, and all that stuff. And a lot of them are doing it. Don't get me. I mean, I'm not going to kid you. There's a lot of art, and they're so good. I seen an artist. I'm not going to mention his name. He was one of the finest southwestern artists out of New Mexico or Arizona. And he was good. And I used to hang out with him down in Scottsdale years ago. He lost his wife in a automobile accident. One time I was in a bar in a nightclub in Albuquerque when I was in my drinking days, when I was carousing around. And I was sitting there with my back and I was leaning on the bar like that, and somebody came and tapped me on the shoulder. Now let me tell you something. The man that I knew before that was a very handsome young man. And he was very famous, more famous than you can shake a stick at. What I saw when I turned around and I said, "Do I know you?" And I didn't know him. His face was ugly. Alcohol. All the things there that I didn't recognize. It was one of the most famous Indian artists in America. Standing before me like that, asking me to buy him a beer. And after this interview, I'll tell you who he was.
Well,
and that's
thank
it.
you,
But that's
Rob.
what
Yeah,
I just wanted to share with you.
That's a
My
good,
way. I
good
can't.
warning of what to avoid for
Well, I couldn't
young
help it.
people coming up, you know.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. You know, I had to tell that story. It's just things. But he's an artist, just like I am.
Right,
He's very famous too.
right.
Very famous.
Well, thank you so much.
Is that it?
That's the interview part. I'm hoping we get to take a look at your paintings here in a minute. All right, we're looking at one of your pictures, Robert. Can you tell us about this one?
This one is an original on the arches. It's the best watercolor paper that I like to use this. Paper is suitable for anything. You can frame it any way you want to. You don't have to worry about the painting deteriorating and all that stuff, you know. Okay. This warrior is a sacred holy man warrior, and he is more or less like representing this warrior that was in battle I was telling you about.
Right.
With the wolf. The red wolf. That's right there is what that is all about, the red wolf. And that one there is kind of like depicting that in a symbolic manner. And that's what he is. He's a Kiowa holy man. You could see the earring in his ear. And that right there is a typical traditional Robert Redbird blanket style.
Right.
But it's also got some, like I said, got some real sacred stuff to it, like that, the red wolves, the legend.
With the use of the airbrush there, I'm going to zero in on the red wolves a little bit because those are wonderful designs. And this painting is called?
This painting is called The Spirit of a Nation. It's about a 32 by 40 inch. And it's kind of like what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about Rudy Giuliani in New York City. This is one of those pieces that would go into that category of historical pieces. It just so happens that we find it here in the gallery. And I'm just so thankful that we have it, because it shows you my blanket style. It shows you this technique that I have. You know what, I noticed that throughout my experience as an artist, that there's nobody using this technique anywhere in this country. I developed it, and a lot of people always ask me, how did you do that? Well, I'm going to tell you to do it, but I doubt if you'll ever get really to the point where you can do it like this. What I did is I got me a bowl of water, and I got that aluminum foil, and I squashed a big gob of that up into a small ball. And then I had that base in there with paint and all that. I dipped it into the paint, the ball. And when you dip, it's just crunched up so tight that it's got all kinds of wrinkles and all kinds of stuff in there. Right. It's hard to do. It's very hard to use it. But it's my technique, and I did it, and I created and designed it. This was done with a ball of aluminum foil all crunched up. And it's dipped in the water, and the water is dripped off from that aluminum foil, and then what's left in there is put on the flat surface. This is laid flat, and then I put water on there.
I see.
That's the technique that I devised.
That's neat. I'm going to focus in on your signature a little bit on this one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do a close up. On to the next one.
This is titled The Corn Maiden. I got this idea while living in Albuquerque many years ago to paint the ladies in their blankets with the kiva. It's more southwest. I captured the southwestern traditional ways, and the corn represents the harvest time of their going into the fields and working it. And this is the blessed water of life that they use. They bless and they pray over this water so that the crops will grow. And this is what that is all about right there. Southwest contemporary style of the corn maiden of the southwestern tribes.
That's beautiful. Get the key a little bit.
Typical Redbird style.
Thank you very much, Robert.